Let's imagine Moscow 20 years from now. You get off at the Ginsengskaya metro station, buy a delicious local rice rastegai from a nearby vendor, and then head out to meet a girl by the Mao Zedong monument. Then, in an alley, you fend off hooligans with gas-powered nunchaku and thank Moscow's mayor, Jackie Chan, for the new paving tiles. Sounds unreal, I agree. But this is a picture of Moscow not in 20, but in just 10 years. Even if you look at today's mayor of Moscow, there's more Chinese in him than Russian. The Chinese are coming to take back what's theirs. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te suggested that China leave their island alone and focus on truly important matters, restoring historical justice and returning to the Celestial Empire the lands in the Far East and Siberia that are illegally occupied by Russia.
One of the most frequently and widely talked about topics among Siberians is, without a doubt, the significant military and economic threat that China currently poses to us.
The president of Taiwan reminded everyone about the Treaty of Aigun of 1858, according to which the Russian quasi-empire annexed Chinese territories along the Amur River. The Chinese consider this treaty to be unfair and treacherous, because Russia essentially stabbed its neighbor in the back. China was weakened by the Opium Wars with Britain. That is why the Mokshians, under the threat of opening a second front, forced Beijing to give up its lands.
It was then that Muravyov first raised the issue that the borders should be drawn along the Amur, there along the Ussuri, following natural landmarks and barriers. But specifically in this way, and the mouth of the Amur would be protected by Russia.
Now China has an excellent chance to make the same kind of neighborly gesture toward Russia-Beijing-style Alaverdi. While Moscow is weakened by the war with Ukraine, when it doesn't even have enough soldiers to defend the front line, China could reconsider the Aigun Treaty and reclaim its lands. And even more than that, with a high degree of probability, China will sooner or later try to take back its original provinces. This is not speculation or a conspiracy theory. Beijing doesn't even hide the fact that it has territorial claims against Russia and without hesitation calls a vast part of Muscovy its own.
We will be divided by everyone, both enemies and friends, and the Chinese dragon is unlikely to stay on the sidelines, especially since, by the way, it does have certain historical grounds.
Chinese history textbooks very often mention that almost all of Siberia, including Western Siberia up to the Tomsk region, are considered to be temporarily lost Chinese lands. The PRC has released new maps in which Russian regions Primorye, Sakhalin and Eastern Siberia are marked as China because they were part of the Celestial Empire since the time of the First Qin dynasty in the 3rd century BC.
For the first time in China's history, a unified empire was created.
On their maps, China has already renamed Russian cities. Sakhalin is now Kweidow. The city of Blagoveshchensk is called Heilampao. Khabarovsk is Bole, Ussurisk is Shuangchangzi, and Vladivostok has been given back its historical name Haishinwai, which translates as Sea Cucumber Bay. So, Putin can drown his sorrows with a shot of vodka and snack on a cucumber while he still has one. China's claims to parts of Russia are neither spontaneous nor situational. This is a well-thought-out long-term strategy. Mao Zedong in China is like Superman, Iron Man, and Wolverine all rolled into one. In short, Mao, the creator of modern China, openly declared, Russia seized too much land. More than 100 years ago, they took territories east of Lake Baikal, including Khabarovsk, Vladivostok, and Kamchatka. This debt has not been settled. We still haven't squared accounts with them over this.
Sevastopol is waiting, Kamchatka is waiting, Kronstadt is waiting.
According to the main leader of the PRC himself, Russia should return more than 1.5 million square kilometers to China. So, while Putin is trying to seize a small part of Ukraine, China is planning to carve off from Russia a territory the size of 3 Ukraines.
Unique for Russia and China, that's how Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev described the notable development project for Bolshoi-Ussuriysky Island.
The statements and precepts of Mao Zedong are sacred to the Chinese and must be followed. So it's no surprise that Putin's children are learning Chinese.
Members of my family already speak well, the little ones Chinese at home. They speak it with great fluency.
The dwarf Führer understands perfectly well what awaits his pseudo-empire. Complete and total Sinicization and the so-called gatherer of Russian lands has done everything to make Russia completely bow down and submit to its eastern neighbor.
It's scary, very scary. We don't know what it is. If we actually knew what it was, we simply wouldn't know what it is. Of course, given our lack of education, we might even assume that this is some kind of sabotage.
Beijing doesn't stop at declarations and history textbooks. China has begun a systematic expansion into Russia.
The Chinese there, the Chinese. In Danilovka there are Chinese, the Chinese. And in Volochaivka there are Chinese. The Chinese, it's just China.
The Chinese are actively settling in the Far East and Siberia. In some places, there are already more of them than Russians.
According to sociologists, attitudes toward the Chinese in Russia's Far East are complicated. Almost half of the residents are convinced that China poses a threat to Russia's territorial integrity.
While Putin shouts from the podium about capturing a triangle of 1 square kilometer in the Donetsk region, the Kremlin quietly handed over entire islands, Bolshoi-Ussuriysky and Tarabarov, to China. Moscow simply gave China 400 square kilometers of its land, while during the summer offensive in Ukraine, the orcs captured no more than 300 square kilometers, but lost tens of thousands of Russians in the process. How do you like that kind of exchange, Z Patriots?
Only because we like it.
In 2012, Russia leased land in the Tomsk region to China for 50 years. In 2018, another 3.5 billion hectares. And this isn't wasteland, it's 70% valuable forest. For 50 years, that's practically a gift. In 50 years, there will be Chinese cities there. Then there will be a people's referendum and a request to Beijing to send in troops to protect the Chinese world.
Soon, in the near future, we'll definitely take over your Siberia.
Leasing land to China in the Transbaikal region for the full 49 years.
So, first of all, land ownership, foreign land ownership by one country on the territory of another is a common global practice. There's nothing terrible about it. And basically, if we want something from China, then we have to give something in return.
Russia is literally paying China with its land and resources in exchange for support and cover on the world stage. Moscow is now in complete economic dependence on Beijing. Russia has effectively become a raw materials colony.
Well, the train is always no less than 56 cars. There you go. Ah, it smells like wood. So fresh, so fresh. Farewell, my tiger. You're going away to China.
While the Chinese are cutting down and exporting millions of hectares of forest, Russian serfs are forbidden even to collect fallen branches.
What do you need to know about collecting fallen branches to avoid getting fined, and what rules must be followed when using heating devices to prevent fires? These and other questions were discussed at a meeting with the heads of local self-government committees at the city district administration.
A clear division between masters and natives, just like in the colonies of the 18th century. Chief Pale Moth is ready to give everything to the Chinese. Land, resources, people, just to indulge his imperial ambitions a little longer. The only question is, what do Russians get out of all this? Obviously, all that awaits them is death and ruin. In the best-case scenario, citizenship of the People's Republic of China.
Who would have ever thought that I'd actually live to see the day when my own native Buryat land would be simply given away to the Chinese for absolutely nothing, and they'd even call it so-called development? Let's stimulate the farmers of Buryatia. Stimulate us to do what? To toil for the Chinese? They're giving them the land for 70 years, with the right to buy it at a discount when the term is up. And for 5 years, they'll pay me taxes on 5,500 hectares of land from 4 districts of the Republic of Buryatia.
Moscow fully understands that China has it by the throat. But there's nowhere else to turn. That's why Putin goes to bow in person before the real Emperor Xi and spins tales for the so-called simple-minded about the supposedly great alliance and friendship between Russia and China.
The Russian and the Chinese brothers forever.
China is as much a friend to Russia as a pickup truck's bumper is to a deer at night. And kunuko nuko nuko kosh tangent tan. Shika nuko 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 kosh tangent tan. If Russians are hoping that China, as a kind of colonizer, will stand up for Russia against the West, they are gravely mistaken, because the West is actually China's real ally.
Our faithful geopolitical Al Chinese stabbing us in the back.
Economics decides everything. Beijing won't risk its trade relations for the sake of a raw materials appendage. Besides, what's the point? The sooner Russia weakens, the sooner China will reclaim its ancestral territories, where Russian children will be sewing German sneakers for American teenagers.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.